In today's video, we're taking a look at all the latest NHL trade and free agent rumors from around the entire NHL. We're talking about teams like the Maple Leafs, the Lightning, and the Flyers. Could the New Jersey Devils haul out the offer sheet and go after one of the top RFAs that are not signed yet? We also have an update on Ilya Kovalchuk and some news around the Pittsburgh Penguins. We'll jump into all the latest news coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. Now, as I mentioned, we have a lot to cover here today, so let's dive right into it and get started. First up, we have some news on the Pittsburgh Penguins. Now, first up, regarding the Penguins, they've actually hired Trevor Daley, who just announced his retirement from the NHL. Of course, he completed his career with the Detroit Red Wings, a longtime defenseman, Stanley Cup champion, had a pretty solid NHL career, played a long time, and certainly has a lot to be proud of. Has immediately gone into taking a job with the Penguins in their front office, so he's certainly going to see the NHL from the other side here, working in an executive type of role. So obviously Daley will join the Penguins staff. Obviously, we'll see what that means for him longer term, but I know he's eager to jump in here. He says that he's very comfortable with the Penguins organization. Obviously, he had played there for a fair bit of time, so very familiar with them as well. And the other thing with the Penguins that many people are kind of finding a little odd is that there is rumors that they're considering bringing in Dale Talon in some sort of executive or consulting type of role. Now, of course, Dale Talon was the former GM now of the Florida Panthers, who was recently let go, and there was a lot of rumors, and apparently the NHL was investigating. I'm not sure if anything ever came from it because there really wasn't any news, or I'm not sure if the NHL has completed its look into this or what the status is, because it's been kind of quiet. But when the NHL playoffs first get underway, there was some rumblings about Dale Talon being accused of making some racial comments inside the NHL bubble. Now, I'm not sure exactly what extent that all was or who it was geared towards. We didn't really get a lot of information, but considering that it's not really complete, the NHL hasn't really made any announcements. I'm not sure if he's been cleared or what, but the Penguins apparently are considering bringing him on in some kind of capacity. So we'll see what Rutherford's up to. We saw that he fired one of his assistant GMs there in the last couple of days here, Carmanos. Of course, Carmanos is somebody who he worked with a long time between his time with Pittsburgh and Carolina. So we'll see what they do and what kind of role Talon could take on and if they actually do hire him. But it's something that apparently is in the works, according to NHL sources. Now, looking at the free agent market and some rumors around where some players may fall, Pierre LeBrun of The Athletic completed an interview recently here with Ilya Kovalchuk. Now, he's a player who still remains unsigned to this point. Many felt before the season was complete that he more likely was heading back to be a member again of the Montreal Canadiens. I know many of us, myself included, expected the Habs to offer him another contract, whether it be a shorter term, maybe a little bit more money than before since they got about league minimum after he was released from his Kings contract. But at this point, it doesn't look like that's happening. The Montreal Canadiens have been a busy team, made a lot of other moves. And at this point, I probably would be somewhat surprised if they did bring him on, just given the look of their roster cap situation. I just don't really see that being possible any longer. So according to this report from LeBrun, now, he does indicate in his interview that at this point, Kovalchuk has had interest from other teams. He's just really taking his time to find the right fit. It's not about money. He's ready, able, and willing to sign a contract at bargain basement deal, so league minimum contract again. I know many people, like I said, felt that after he performed well at that kind of contract with the Habs and his brief time in Washington, that he would be able to get a little bit more money, maybe an extra year on a contract or something, like a better deal. But it's not really looking like teams are all that interested in that kind of contract. It's going to have to likely be, again, a one-year deal at league minimum. And if it's really about winning, like he says, then that's what he's going to have to end up doing if he wants to keep playing. So at this point, he's weighing out some options. Not in a hurry. There's 4 or 5 teams that are reportedly expressing interest, and he's just trying to decide from a winning perspective, family perspective, total fit, what might be best for his career. So we'll see where he ends up. But it doesn't look like he's heading back to Montreal. Now, one player I wanted to talk about here again today that we haven't touched on in some time is Frederick Anderson of the Toronto Maple Leafs. Now, there was a lot of uncertainty over his future with the club heading into this offseason. There was a lot of rumors that the Leafs were looking to make some upgrades and that goaltending was an area that they were really focused on, and that trading Anderson was a real possibility. Well, at this point, it's yet to happen, and based on the other moves we've seen the Leafs make, it's probably unlikely at this point, at least here in the short term. Now, a couple of things that were really attractive about Anderson's contract is, even though he comes with a cap hit of $5 million, a big chunk of his salary has already been paid through a signing bonus, so his actual cash out that teams would have to pay him this year are much, much less, and it would be a cheap way for a team to make an acquisition and not have to spend a lot of money for a high caliber goaltender. So clearly the goaltenders on the market between trade and free agency this offseason were in large numbers. There was a lot of options out there. I'm sure that Dubas and the Leafs did explore many of them, but it just wasn't something that appeared like they could get done or work out. We did see them bring in Aaron Dell, a former backup goalie in the San Jose organization, who will battle with Jack Campbell for the backup spot. I'm not sure it's going to be much of a battle, but his intention is to try to earn that spot. Obviously, if not, they'll have to put Dell through waivers to go to the minor leagues and be a goaltender here with the Toronto Marlies. But in the case of Frederik Andersen, at this point, it does look like a trade is less likely. He's likely going to end up playing out that contract with the Leafs. Now, if a worst-case scenario, something unimaginable happened and they were having a bad season, he could be a trade deadline target like we saw Robin Leonard go to Vegas last year. Goalies are less likely to be dealt at the deadline, but if for some reason something collapsed in Toronto, which I do not expect, by the way, which is, like I said, it's a scenario that's incredibly unlikely going to happen, that's probably going to be the only way that Frederik Andersen at this point is indeed traded. So more likely he plays out that contract, but it's pretty likely at this point that he probably departs the Maple Leafs via free agency next offseason. He likely could become one of the higher paid goaltenders in the NHL, given, depending on what the market is like for teams that are shopping for goaltenders, obviously in free agency next offseason. He won't have as many guys on the open market to deal with like there was this year, so it should create a little bit more of a demand for teams that are interested in making some upgrades. Obviously, it's pretty likely he could go into the season with a little bit of a chip on his shoulder, knowing all the rumors about the Leafs maybe trading him, and obviously he's playing for a contract as well. I would not be surprised at all to see a tremendous year out of Freddie Andersen and have him get a big contract next offseason. But unless the Leafs really start off and have a brutal start or something, I do not see a scenario now where he is traded and he likely becomes a free agent target for many other teams next offseason. Now, one team who's hard up against the cap, who we've kind of touched on periodically when we've had updates, is the Tampa Bay Lightning. Now, the Lightning are a team who desperately need to shed salary to get Cirelli and Sergachev and Cernak under contract, and they're having a difficult time doing it. They've been trying everything under the sun to move Tyler Johnson as their first step. They likely could have to move another player as well, but there's so many no-trade clauses on that team that it's really difficult to do without having them agree to move, and many of them do not want to. They are obviously a part of a Stanley Cup championship team. I'm sure they love living in Florida. The tax situation is good. There's a lot of reasons why they wanted those no-trade clauses. The Lightning gave them to them, and now they're kind of handcuffed. So ultimately, they might get to the point that they have no choice but to trade a player like the RFAs are trying to sign because they have no other way to become cap compliant. We will have to wait and see on that front. But apparently, a team that is interested in Johnson is the Anaheim Ducks. However, they're not keen on his $5 million salary. They really like the player, but not at that price point. So the Lightning at this point would be requested to retain salary and offer a sweetener in there as well. So some kind of a picker prospect as an added incentive to take that contract on. It does have a number of years left on it as well. So it's not just the money. There is some term too that has to be factored in. So at least they do have the Ducks that are interested. It just really boils down to the fact, are they willing to pay that kind of price or not? I mean, if they have to retain salary and give up a sweetener, it's not going to, obviously free up as much space as they need to, but they have to do something. We're at a point where they can take their time here with these RFAs because Cirelli and Sergachev do not have arbitration rights. So they don't have to be signed. There's no danger of an arbitrator making an award that they need to make decisions on here in short order. But still, you don't want it to drag on too long. You don't want to have scenarios like we saw with other players where they go into the beginning of the season unsigned, which means if they're not signed and they can't play, it just really creates a bit of a distraction and a bit of a mess. So if I'm Tampa, I want to get this sorted out sooner than later. So we'll see. But right now, the Ducks are certainly interested in Johnson if they can strike the right deal with the Lightning. Now, another player who's still in the trade bait board when you look at TSN's top players they expect who could be traded, and one of that is Flyers forward Travis Konechny, as well as defenseman on the Flyers Shane Gostisbehere. But there's been very little talk out of the Flyers organization about potential moves. As much as they're still out there, I don't think there's been a whole lot of conversations taking place. And at this point, when it comes to Konechny especially, it's believed that he would only be traded in a move that would be like a franchise-altering type of move. It'd have to be a really significant player coming back, like, for example, Patrik Laine. When we talked about the Laine rumors that were going on and the teams that were heavily involved in those conversations and the most likely to acquire, the Flyers were right at the top of that list. They're well positioned to do it. If they give up players like Konechny and Gostisbehere and a solid prospect like a Joel Farabee, or Morgan Frost, or something to that effect, that's probably going to be really, really close to what the Jets are looking for to get a deal done on Laine. Like I said, it's probably going to take 3 or 4 pieces to get a bona fide 35-40 goal scorer consistently here in his young career. So at this point, could Konechny still be traded? It is possible. Gostisbehere more likely could be traded in a different kind of scenario as well. I think the Flyers will certainly consider all scenarios for Gostisbehere. But when it comes to Konechny, the latest on the rumor mill is that he's only going to be moved if it's involved in a blockbuster to really make a significant upgrade. And I guess we'll see if that happens. I know many of us would love to see a big move in the NHL. With all the talk around Laine, it would make sense that he would be one of those big names that would get that done and could be one of the bigger names moved sooner than later. But right now, for the last little bit, there's been kind of quiet on the Laine front. Not so sure we're going to see that this offseason after all. Now, could we still see an offer sheet? I know I've said a few times I thought it was pretty unlikely because there's not too many teams out there who can do it because they don't have the space. But according to former assistant general manager in Los Angeles, Mike Fuda, who was recently interviewed just a couple weeks back, he's indicated here in his interview that the Devils are really, really interested in using the offer sheet method as a way to gain a really solid young player. Now, of course, he interviewed for the GM job with the Devils before they decided to stick with Tom Fitzgerald on a full-time basis. So he went through a lot, and he said that was a big part of the interview process, was how the Devils as an organization were talking about how they wanted to spend some assets and some money to bring in some solid young players, and that the offer sheet would be a prime way to do that. So he knows firsthand and has some inside knowledge here based on his interviews and chats and conversations he's had with members of the organization and the ownership group. So to me, it's certainly a very credible source when talking about what they might be considering. Now, who could they possibly target? I mean, if you look at the potential targets on the market, you're looking at Matthew Barzal in Long Island. You got Ryan Pulock, and also in Long Island, you've got Anthony Cirelli in Tampa. You got Mikhail Sergachev, Eric Chernak. They're kind of like your leading contenders because those are the teams that are the most cash-strapped that would have a difficult time matching an offer. But with the Devils having guys like Hischier and Hughes already, the top 2 centers in their organization, I would think they'd be less likely to go after a guy like Barzal, but at the same time, he might be the most intriguing to kind of target. I would think the more likely one that they might go after would be a guy like Mikhail Sergachev. That's just my opinion. If they were going to do one, that would be a piece to go after. If you look at their blue line, they have some interesting young players in that regard, but a guy like Sergachev would really give that blue line a big boost. So maybe, just maybe, we'll see an offer sheet here after all. I said that Fuda, who's got some inside knowledge, says that the Devils are real keen on it. They're one of the few teams who have some space and some picks to work with. So could they target one of these young RFA players? Let me know which one you think makes the most sense for them to target. And do you think they could actually be successful in landing the player? Let me know your thoughts down below, and we'll discuss further. So let us all your updates for today. Of course, I want to know your thoughts on the RFAs as well as everything else talked about here today. So let me know all your thoughts down below, and we'll discuss further. If you're new to the channel, consider subscribing, turning on your notifications so you don't miss any future content, and give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. I'd appreciate it if you did. As always, thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time.